He said, "You're not even Riley Blood. Don't embarrass yourself by showing up." That's what my father hissed into the phone before hanging up and blocking me. 2 days later, I drove to Seaglass Inn, where our family reunion was scheduled. He didn't know I bought it. Every room, every table, every camera. But the betrayal didn't end there. I found out he'd planned a fake tribute to my mother at the same reunion he banned me from, and invited the woman he once swore was a threat to our family. That's when I realized this wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. So I flipped the script, quietly, powerfully, and I watched him walk into my venue like a king, knowing I'd set every trap. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Lauren Riley, and I'm 36 years old. Each morning, I watch the sunrise from my office at Seaside Manor, the wedding venue I now own. My father, Coach Eugene Riley, built his legend in our small town through charm and calculated kindness to everyone but me. My shoulders still tense when I remember how he skipped my college graduation to attend my stepbrother Mark's football game. The way my stepmother Caroline's daughters got the family heirlooms while I got silence. The past used to haunt me, but therapy changed that. When Dad's curt email arrived, "Don't bother coming to the family reunion," I felt something shift inside. My fingers traced the deed to Seaside Manor, where that very reunion was scheduled to take place. But let me start from the beginning. That email sat in my inbox for 3 days. Don't bother coming. 4 words that should have crushed me, would have, a year ago. Instead, I booked a suite at the Seaglass Inn and pointed my car toward Briar Bay. You know that moment when you're driving somewhere important and your mind drifts to every possible outcome? The 2-hour trip down the coast gave me plenty of time to second-guess myself. But the closer I got to Briar Bay, the more certain I felt. This wasn't about crashing a party I wasn't wanted at. This was about something bigger. The Seaglass Inn rose from the shoreline like a postcard come to life. 7 acres of manicured gardens, whitewashed buildings, and that signature glass-walled ballroom catching the afternoon light. My newest acquisition. I'd closed the deal last month, but seeing it in person, knowing it was mine, that was different. "Ms. Riley?" Sandra Chen, the outgoing manager, met me at the entrance. "Welcome to the Seaglass." I followed her through the property tour, nodding at all the right moments. The historic main building dated back to 1925. The gardens could seat 300 for outdoor ceremonies. The climate-controlled wine cellar held vintages worth more than my first condo. But what really caught my attention was the wall of memories, photos of every major event hosted here since the 50s. "Your family's reunion will be our last event under the old management," Sandra said, flipping through her tablet. 75 years of tradition, pretty special. I kept my face neutral. Very special. "Remember when you were a kid and your mom would say everything happens for a reason?" The reunion booking was pure coincidence, scheduled months before I even considered buying the place. But standing there, watching Sandra transfer the master calendar to my account, it felt like more than chance. "All future communications will route through you directly now," she confirmed, showing me the updated contact information. Though I doubt there'll be many changes this close to the event. The salt air followed us onto the back terrace. Below, waves crashed against the seawall, and seagulls wheeled overhead. I breathed it in, letting the ocean settle my nerves. This was my space now, my rules. "I'll need the complete guest list," I said. Sandra pulled it up immediately. "Of course. The Riley family booked 98 rooms total. Here's the breakdown by..." My hand shot out, stopping her scroll. One name jumped off the screen, Josie Quinn. "This guest," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Listed as a cousin's friend?" "Yes, last-minute addition." "Is there a problem?" Was there ever? Josie Quinn wasn't some random +1. She was my mother's best friend, the woman in all those old photos Mom kept in her craft room, the one Dad banned from our house after the funeral. I hadn't seen her since I was 6, but I'd never forgotten her face. "No problem," I said, just making note. The rest of the tour blurred past. My mind kept circling back to Josie's name. Why would she come now, after 30 years? Why list herself as a cousin's friend instead of who she really was? When Sandra finally left me alone in my suite, I sat at the window watching the sun sink into the ocean. The same view my family would have in a few weeks, not knowing their black sheep owned every inch of this paradise. not knowing I controlled their precious reunion down to the last detail. But Josie's presence changed things. She was a loose thread in Dad's carefully woven narrative, the one person who might know what really happened the day Mom died, the one witness he couldn't quite erase. I pulled out my phone and opened Dad's email again. Don't bother coming. Oh, I was coming all right, but not as a guest begging for scraps of belonging. I was coming as the owner, with 30 years of questions, and Josie Quinn was going to answer them. Back in my suite, I pulled out the worn leather album I'd brought from home. Mom's familiar scrawl labeled each photo in faded blue ink. The pages crackled as I turned them, releasing that musty sweet smell that always reminded me of rainy afternoons in her craft room. Josie and me, spring break '85. Girls' weekend at Lake Martin. Christmas cookie baking with my bestie. Photo after photo showed Mom and Josie together, arms linked, heads thrown back laughing, matching sundresses at backyard barbecues. They weren't just friends. They were inseparable. The kind of friendship I'd always wanted but never quite found. Maybe because Dad's cold shadow made me keep everyone at arm's length. I remembered snippets of conversation from when I was little, before Mom died. "Auntie Josie's coming over," I'd squeal, and Mom would light up. But after the funeral, Dad shut it all down. No more Auntie Josie, no more photos, no more mentions of her name. You know that feeling when you spot a thread hanging from your sleeve, and the more you pull, the more the whole thing starts to unravel? That's what this felt like. My laptop hummed as I dug deeper. Josie Quinn's professional life was an open book. 30 years as a college counselor at Bay Community College, perfect attendance record, glowing student reviews. She'd never married, lived in the same modest house since the 90s, and volunteered at the local library. Nothing scandalous, nothing that screamed threat. So why had Dad cut her out so completely? I clicked through local news archives, social media, anything that might connect her to our family. Nothing. She'd maintained radio silence about us for 3 decades. Too perfect, too careful. "What are you hiding, Auntie Josie?" I whispered to the empty room. The welcome mixer started at 7. I wasn't supposed to be there. Technically, I was still banned. But I had ways around that now. I slipped on a catering uniform, pulled my hair back tight, and grabbed a tray of champagne flutes. Sometimes the best way to be invisible is to wear a uniform and carry food. The garden terrace buzzed with arrival energy. Cousins hugging, kids racing between tables, everyone talking over each other. Dad held court near the fountain, same as always. His booming laugh carried across the space, drawing people in like moths to flame. I kept my head down and circulated, eyes scanning for Josie. She arrived late, hovering at the edges of groups. Gone was the vibrant woman from Mom's photos. This Josie moved like someone carrying a heavy secret, shoulders tight, smile fixed, eyes darting to Dad's location every few minutes. When Cousin Rachel tried to pull her into a group photo, Josie made excuses about bad lighting. "You must be Josie," Aunt Martha's voice carried. "We're so glad you could join us this year." I drifted closer, pretending to arrange empty glasses. "Thank you for including me." Josie's hands twisted her napkin. "I wouldn't have missed it. Eugene, Coach Riley, speaks so highly of you." My tray almost slipped. Dad spoke highly of her, the woman he'd banished from our lives? Does he? Josie's laugh held an edge. "That's kind of him." Something in her tone made me look closer. The slight tremor in her hands, the way she kept checking her phone. This wasn't a happy reunion guest enjoying old memories. This was someone monitoring a situation, making sure nothing went wrong. I'd seen that look before, in the mirror. All those years I tiptoed around Dad's moods, watching for signs of storms. Josie wasn't here for fun. She was here because she had to be, because something bigger than a family reunion was at stake. My original plan had been simple: let them have their party, then reveal my ownership dramatically at the end. But watching Josie's careful dance, seeing Dad's too-perfect host routine, I knew this ran deeper. They were both protecting something, a truth about Mom's death that had stayed buried for 30 years. Well, I owned this venue now. Every security camera, every room key, every staff schedule. And I was done watching from the shadows. Time to start pulling threads and see what unraveled. Morning fog rolled in from the bay, wrapping the garden courtyard in pearl gray silence. I'd been watching from my office window since sunrise, waiting. Josie was an early riser. I'd noticed that during yesterday's breakfast service. Like clockwork, she appeared on the stone path, wrapped in a powder blue cardigan, heading for her usual bench. You ever notice how some moments feel like they're happening in slow motion? Like the universe is holding its breath? That's how it felt as I made my way down the service stairs and across the courtyard. "Beautiful morning for a walk," I said, stopping a few feet from her bench. Josie looked up, polite confusion crossing her face. "Oh yes, it's lovely. The gardens here are—" She froze mid-sentence, really seeing me for the first time. Her hand flew to her throat. "Lauren?" "Hello, Auntie Josie." The color drained from her face. You look just like her." "Like Mom, you mean?" I sat beside her, not asking permission. Funny how Dad never mentioned that. Then again, he never mentioned you either. Not after the funeral. Her fingers twisted in her lap. "Lauren, I don't think— Let's skip the part where you pretend this is a coincidence." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You were my mother's best friend. I found the photos." Josie's shoulders slumped. "I wondered if you'd remember me. I remember everything." The morning air felt thick with memory. The scent of Mom's perfume, the sound of their laughter floating up from the kitchen, including how you disappeared right after she died. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Your father thought it would be better. My father thought a lot of things. I turned to face her fully. But what I need to know is what really happened to my mother that day. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Josie stared at her hands, then out at the misty gardens. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. We all believed the story he told. That Sarah went hiking alone, that she slipped on a wet trail. She swallowed hard. But I was there that morning. I saw them leave together. My heart hammered against my ribs. Go on. They were arguing. Sarah had discovered something. Financial documents, proof that Eugene had been embezzling from the school's athletic fund. She threatened to report it. Josie's words tumbled out faster now, like she couldn't hold them back anymore. I followed them up the trail, worried. I heard everything. What happened on that trail? The fight got worse. Eugene grabbed her arm, told her she'd destroy everything they'd built. Sarah pulled away, said she wouldn't live with his lies anymore. Josie's eyes filled with tears. He just walked away, left her there, miles from the parking lot. Hours later, her voice cracked. She really did slip, but he didn't report it for 2 days. By then, he'd cleaned up the evidence at home, created his own version of events. The fog seemed to press closer, muffling everything except Josie's words. Why didn't you tell anyone? He had proof I'd helped students cheat on their college applications. Said he'd make sure I never worked in education again. She wiped her eyes. I was a coward. I let him control the narrative. Let him blame you, even though you were just a child. Something shifted inside me. Decades of doubt crystallizing into razor-sharp certainty. Every cold shoulder, every missed milestone, every time he'd made me feel small, it was all built on this lie. My hands shook as I stood, but my mind was clear. Thank you, Josie, for finally telling me the truth. She caught my wrist. Lauren, wait. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Eugene isn't just cruel, he's smart. He sees things coming. I gently pulled free. So am I. And he won't see this coming at all. Back in my office at the inn, I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. Years of therapy had taught me to breathe through moments like this, but honestly, sometimes you need to let the earthquake happen. I pulled up my laptop and opened a fresh email draft. The cursor blinked at me like a challenge. You know that feeling when you're about to light a match near gasoline? That's what this was. One spark, carefully placed. Dear extended Riley family, I typed, then backspaced. Too formal. Hey everyone! Better, more cheerful, more unsuspecting. The words flowed easier after that. I wrote about tradition, about celebrating our legacy, about bringing joy to the reunion. Then dropped the hook, a family talent show with a $5,000 prize. To honor the creative spirit that's always run in our blood, I wrote, thinking of Mom's paintings hidden in our attic. My cousin Derek replied first, count me in, still got my juggling skills from college. Then Aunt Marie, what a wonderful idea. The grandkids would love to perform. They kept coming, dancers, singers, storytellers, Even my teenage niece volunteered to help with the tech setup. Perfect. I needed someone who could handle the audiovisual equipment without asking too many questions. While responses poured in, I started my real work. Remember those boxes of Mom's things I'd kept? Tonight, they became ammunition. I pulled out her journals first, leather-bound, pages crisp with age. The entry from 2 days before her death jumped out immediately. Eugene threatens everything if I speak up, but silence is its own kind of crime. My hands steadied as I scanned each page. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was resurrection. My mother's voice, finally heard. Next came the photos. Mom and Josie at college graduation, at my christening, at the beach 3 weeks before everything ended. I digitized each one, noting dates, creating a timeline that would be impossible to deny. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Josie had sent her statement. 3 pages, notarized, detailing everything she'd told me in the garden. She'd even included old text messages from Dad, thinly veiled threats about staying quiet. I should have done this years ago, she wrote. I'm ready to face whatever comes. The evidence deck took shape. Mom's journals, the photos, financial documents she'd discovered, Josie's statement, all building to one unavoidable truth. You'd think this would feel more like victory. Instead, each piece I added felt like picking up broken glass, necessary but painful. I remembered being 6 years old, asking Dad why he never hung my drawings on the fridge like other parents did. Some people just aren't worth displaying, he'd said, not even looking at me. My phone chirped again. A voicemail from 2 months ago. I'd saved it, knowing someday I'd need to remember exactly why I was doing this. Dad's voice filled my office, cold as ever. Lauren. He always said my name like that, like it tasted bitter. I told you to stop asking about the past. You're embarrassing yourself. Again, just like always, don't contact me about this anymore. I let his words hang in the air, feeling their familiar sting one last time. Then I opened my presentation software and started arranging slides. The talent show would open with my niece's dance routine, then cousin Derek's juggling. My performance would come last, when everyone was relaxed, when Dad was in the front row, trapped by social obligation. By sunrise, the evidence deck was ready. I'd timed it perfectly. 15 minutes of undeniable truth, building like a wave. No dramatic accusations, no room for spin. Just facts, dates, voices from the past, all coming together to drown him in reality. I looked out my office window at the ocean. The same waves Mom used to paint, back when she was alive and fighting her own silent battle. I wish you could see this, I whispered, touching the glass. I wish you knew your truth was finally getting its moment. My phone lit up with another excited email about the talent show. Aunt Marie asking if she could bring her guitar. I smiled as I typed back, of course, the more performances, the better. After all, every good show needs a proper build-up to its finale. Saturday morning glowed with perfect beach weather. Guests clustered around the breakfast buffet, chattering about tomorrow's talent show. I played my part, clipboard in hand, noting down performance requests, smiling at everyone's enthusiasm. Lauren, honey. Aunt Marie waved me over, her reading glasses perched on her nose. I've been practicing that John Denver song all morning. Do you think 3 minutes is too long? Not at all. I checked her name off my list. We want everyone to have their moment. You know that feeling when you're carrying something fragile through a crowd? That's how I felt, walking among my relatives. Every laugh, every casual touch on my arm felt like a potential crack in my composure. But I kept moving, kept smiling, kept checking details off my list. Between coordinating signups, I slipped away to my office 3 times to back up my presentation. First to an encrypted cloud drive, then to 2 separate USB sticks. Paranoid? Maybe. But I'd learned early that preparation beats regret. The scent of coffee and sea air drifted through the open windows as I reviewed the seating chart one last time. I'd positioned Dad front and center, close enough to the screen that he couldn't miss a single detail, but far enough from the exits that he'd have to climb over people to escape. The school board members he'd invited would flank him on both sides. Perfect witnesses. This is going to be epic! My niece Lily bounced into the office, her dance shoes hanging around her neck. I can't wait to see everyone perform. Even Grandpa seems excited. My hand froze over the keyboard. Grandpa? He mentioned the show? Oh yeah, he was just talking about it at brunch. She dropped into the chair across from me, twirling a strand of hair. Though Tommy kind of made it weird. Tommy? My youngest cousin, always saying more than he should. What do you mean? He said something dumb about you trying to ruin everything. Lily rolled her eyes. Uncle Riley got mad at him for bringing it up. Said Tommy shouldn't repeat private emails. The room tilted slightly. Private emails? Yeah. Tommy said Uncle Riley saw your email about... Lily's phone buzzed. Oh, shoot. Gotta go. Mom needs help with her costume. She bounced out, leaving me in suddenly thick air. My hands shook as I opened my email activity log. There it was, multiple logins from an unrecognized device, starting 3 days ago. The memory hit like a slap. Dad's old iPad, the one Mom bought him. We'd shared an Apple ID back then, to sync family photos. I'd changed all my passwords since, but had I remembered to remove that device access? My stomach churned as I scrolled through the activity log. He'd seen everything. My communications with the AV team, my notes about timing, my entire schedule. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I checked my cloud storage. The presentation file was still there, but had he seen it? Modified it? I pulled up the backup USB drive, comparing versions. They matched, but that meant nothing if he'd already started damage control. I closed my eyes, remembering his tactics. He'd be subtle at first, dropping hints, planting doubts. By the time I played my reveal, he'd have already framed me as unstable, attention-seeking, the same way he'd framed Mom when she threatened to expose his lies. My phone buzzed. Another excited message about tomorrow's show. But now the enthusiasm felt hollow, tainted. Every smile I'd seen today took on a different meaning. How many of them already doubted me? How many were just waiting to see me fail? I gripped the edge of my desk, forcing steady breaths. The familiar weight of powerlessness crept up my spine. That old feeling of being 6 years old, trying to convince adults that, yes, Daddy really did say those mean things when no one was looking. But I wasn't 6 anymore. And this time, I had evidence. Real, solid proof. If I could just get them to watch it, to really see... My hands still trembled as I checked the venue's internal server. At least those files were secure, only accessible through the building's closed network. But would that be enough? Would anyone even believe what they saw, if Dad had already poisoned the well? The lunch bell chimed outside my office. Voices rose in the hallway, happy, oblivious voices heading to another family meal. I should join them, keep up appearances. But for the first time since this plan began, I wasn't sure I could fake another smile. I didn't waste time wallowing. 6 hours. That's all I had to redesign everything. And this time, I'd make it impossible for Dad to interfere. The venue's tech room hummed with possibility as I slipped inside, nodding to Marcus, our IT manager. Hey, need a quick favor with those welcome screens? The ones in the dining hall? He swiveled in his chair. What's up? I want to run a special presentation tomorrow. I kept my voice casual, professional. During the blessing before dinner, highlight some old family photos, that kind of thing. Marcus typed something into his keyboard. Sure, we can cue that up. Which format? I handed him my encrypted drive. MP4, about 8 minutes long. I need it to start automatically at exactly 6:45 p.m. The time Dad always insisted on complete silence for Grace. And I mean exactly. No manual triggers, no delays. Got it. He started uploading the file. Want me to test it now? Please. I watched as the first frame appeared across all 6 monitors. My mother's smile, frozen in time, filled each screen. My throat tightened. Perfect. Now can you lock this into the system? Administrator access only? Already done. He showed me the security settings. Only you and I can touch it now. I squeezed his shoulder. Thanks. And Marcus? This stays between us. Outside, laughter drifted up from the beach. The annual volleyball tournament was in full swing, a tradition Mom used to love. I remembered her diving for impossible saves, sand in her hair, joy in every movement. Dad would never let her win, though. He'd spike the ball directly at her, claiming it was just good strategy. You know what else is good strategy? Having your own venue, having your own staff, having your own power. I joined the family gathering, sliding into my role like a comfortable mask. Who's winning? I called out, settling onto a beach chair beside my cousin Rachel. Team Blue, as usual. She offered me some chips. You should join us. Unless you're too busy with your web design stuff? I almost laughed. If she only knew I signed her paycheck for being here. Maybe later. How's the talent show prep going? Oh my God, wait till you see what we planned. She launched into details about her kids' dance routine, while I nodded and smiled, the perfect audience. The afternoon melted into evening. Someone fired up the grills, and the scent of barbecue mixed with salt air. I moved through it all like a ghost, present but separate, knowing that in less than 24 hours, none of this facade would matter. Dad held court near the fire pit, telling his famous football stories. The ones where he's always the hero, always the wise mentor, always the man who could do no wrong. I caught his eye once, just once, and saw something flicker there. Calculation, warning. He thought he had me figured out. But he didn't know about Marcus, or the locked system, or the timing I'd chosen. He couldn't stop what was coming, no matter how many emails he read. Later, in my room, exhaustion hit like a wave. I'd maintained my smile for hours, played my part perfectly. But as I drifted off, Mom's face floated behind my eyelids. Not from the old photos, but as I remembered her last. Determined, strong, ready to speak truth, no matter the cost. The dream came without warning. We were on that mountain trail, but this time I wasn't 6. I was 36, watching it all happen. Mom turned to me, her eyes clear and knowing. Some silences protect lies, she said, and some sounds shatter them. I jolted awake an hour before dawn, heart pounding, sheets twisted around me. The sky outside my window held that peculiar pre-sunrise glow, the moment between dark and light when anything feels possible. Mom was right. Silence had protected Dad's lies long enough. Time to make some noise. Sunday morning crept in with fog so thick it seemed to muffle even birdsong. I stood at my bedroom window, watching it curl around the inn's weathered columns like ghostly fingers. Down below, early risers dotted the breakfast patio, their chatter floating up in fragments. Can't wait to see the kids perform. Coach's blessing is always so moving. Such a beautiful tradition. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, the same window I'd gazed through while planning renovations months ago, before any of this felt real. Now it was all too real. The weight of the flash drive in my pocket, the countdown in my head, the tremor in my hands that wouldn't quite settle. Remember when you were little and thunderstorms used to roll in off the bay? That electric feeling just before lightning struck? This was worse. This was knowing exactly when and where the bolt would hit. By noon, the fog had burned away, leaving behind the kind of crystal-clear day that photographers dream about. Perfect for family photos, someone said. Perfect for memories. I watched Dad work the lunch crowd in his crisp navy polo and pressed jeans, all practiced charm and calculated warmth. He'd perfected that public persona decades ago, the beloved coach, the wise patriarch, the pillar of our community. Lauren? My cousin waved me over. We need help with the talent show setup. The kids want to practice their routine one more time. I smiled, already knowing none of it would happen. Of course. Let me check on dinner preparations first. The kitchen hummed with activity. I moved through it like a ghost, confirming timing, adjusting place settings, triple-checking the monitor's programming with Marcus. Each screen tested perfectly. 6 identical displays, positioned so no one could miss them. All set, Marcus assured me again. 6:45 p.m., exactly like you asked. I nodded, my throat too tight for words. The afternoon slipped away like sand through an hourglass. Guests drifted in from beach walks and pool time, dressed for dinner in their Sunday best. The dining room filled with familiar faces, voices, laughter. I took my seat near the middle, where I could see everything. At 6:30, servers brought out the first course. Right on schedule, Dad stood, commanding attention without effort. Before we begin this wonderful meal, let's bow our heads in gratitude. 6:44 p.m. My heart thundered so loud I was sure others could hear it. 6:45 p.m. The screens flickered to life. Mom's face filled every monitor, young, vibrant, caught mid-laugh at some long-ago moment. The room stilled. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Her voice came next, reading from journal entries I'd found hidden in her old art supplies. Dates appeared on screen, creating a timeline. Photos dissolved into each other. Mom with Josie, Mom arguing with Dad, Mom on that final hiking trail. "What is this?" someone whispered. Dad's head snapped up. I watched color drain from his face as realization hit. The footage continued. Medical reports. Weather data from that weekend. Police statements with key inconsistencies highlighted. Then Josie appeared, her recent confession captured in stark detail. He left her there. Josie's recorded voice trembled. He knew the storm was coming. He waited 2 days to report it. A fork clattered against china. Children squirmed, picking up on the tension. My aunt pressed her hand to her mouth. Dad stood so abruptly his chair toppled backward. Without a word, he bolted toward the nearest exit, leaving his half-finished blessing hanging in the air like smoke. What the hell? Uncle James broke the silence. I didn't move, didn't speak, just let the truth unspool across those screens, finally giving voice to 30 years of silence. When the last frame faded, I rose quietly from my seat. The weight of every stare pressed against my skin, but I kept my chin level, my steps measured. The evening air hit my face as I pushed through the French doors, carrying with it the scent of sea salt and jasmine. Behind me, chaos erupted in whispers and exclamations. But I didn't turn back. My part was done. The truth was out. The sky above had deepened to indigo, first stars just beginning to emerge. The morning after my reveal dawned quiet. Too quiet. You know that strange hush after a storm passes? When everything's still dripping and raw? That's what it felt like, scrolling through my phone at 5 a.m., watching the notifications pile up. I'd expected fallout, but not this fast. My cousin's group chat had exploded overnight. Screenshots and recordings from the dinner circulated like wildfire. Some defended Dad, calling it a witch hunt. Others demanded answers. A few just posted shocked emojis and went silent. Did you see Channel 8 tried calling? My assistant's text popped up. 3 times since midnight. I hadn't. I'd been too busy fielding messages from Josie. The soft knock at my office door didn't surprise me. Josie stood there, looking like she hadn't slept. I'm ready, she said simply. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. You're sure? She nodded, settling into the leather seat with careful dignity. 30 years is long enough. Her fingers twisted in her lap. The Mirror called again. Their reporter, Sarah something, she wants to meet. Today. The local paper. Small, but respected. Perfect. I can arrange a conference room here, I offered. Private entrance, no cameras except their official photographer. A ghost of relief crossed Josie's face. Thank you. While my staff prepped the room, I pulled out Mom's journals, the ones I'd only shown fragments of during last night's reveal. Josie's eyes went soft when she saw the familiar handwriting. She wrote about everything, I said quietly. The fights, the threats, the way he'd twist things to make her doubt herself. It's all here. Josie's hand trembled as she touched one faded page. I should have spoken up sooner. You're speaking now. The interview lasted 3 hours. Sarah from the Mirror arrived armed with research and pointed questions. Professional, but compassionate. I stayed just long enough to provide context for the journals, then left them alone. By sunset, my phone buzzed with a news alert. The story had already gone live online. Breaking, longtime friend reveals dark truth behind local legend's past. The dominoes fell faster after that. Tuesday morning, Dad's carefully curated world started crumbling. The school board, his pride and joy, where he'd served as moral compass for 2 decades, called an emergency meeting. Their vote was unanimous. By noon, they'd released a statement, regretfully accepting his immediate resignation. My cousin Rachel texted, "Did you see?" I had. Rachel, he's not answering anyone's calls. I imagined him in his study, surrounded by his precious trophies and plaques, watching his reputation dissolve in real time. The thought should have satisfied me. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. More calls came, more reporters, more relatives choosing sides. The family text chain fractured into smaller groups, Team Truth versus Team Denial. I stayed out of both. People are asking for statements, my PR manager warned. Let them ask. Wednesday brought surreal headlines. Coach Riley's decades-long deception exposed. Beloved leader's legacy, questioned after daughter's reveal. Community reels as hero falls. Dad maintained his silence. No statements, no defenses, no carefully worded apologies through his lawyer. Just nothing. Aunt Margaret, his staunchest defender, finally cracked Thursday morning. How could you do this to your own father? I typed back one line. Ask him how he could do that to my mother. She left me on read. By week's end, the Mirror story had been picked up by larger outlets. Josie's testimony, backed by Mom's journals and the timeline I'd assembled, proved impossible to dismiss. The evidence was too solid, the details too specific. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. You've ruined everything. Dad. Had to be. I let that sit unanswered too. Because here's the thing about truth. Once it's out, it doesn't need your help anymore. It grows on its own, filling all the spaces lies once occupied. Josie called Friday evening, sounding lighter somehow. The school board wants me to speak at their next meeting. About creating better oversight policies. You should do it. I think I will. She paused. Lauren, your mother would be proud. The words caught me off guard. I glanced at Mom's photo on my desk, the one where she's laughing by the lighthouse, hair wild in the wind. For the first time in years, the image didn't hurt to look at. My assistant knocked, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but you wanted to know when the breakfast RSVPs started coming in? I nodded, already knowing what came next. Because this was just the beginning. The morning sun streamed through the inn's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the breakfast buffet. I watched my relatives mill about, loading plates with Belgian waffles and fresh fruit, their conversations a mix of hushed whispers and forced cheer. Amazing how quickly people adapt to earthquakes, even social ones. You know that feeling when you're holding on to something huge and it's practically buzzing under your skin? That was me, straightening my navy sheath dress, touching the stack of cream envelopes in my pocket for the 100th time. More coffee, Ms. Riley? Manuel, my head server, appeared at my elbow with a fresh carafe. Thanks. I smiled, noting how a few nearby cousins perked up at his use of my name. The whispers shifted, grew more pointed. Aunt Carol caught my eye from across the room and made a beeline for my table. Lauren, honey, this has all been so... well. She fiddled with her pearl necklace. The venue is lovely, though, despite everything. It is, isn't it? I took a slow sip of coffee. The previous owner did an amazing job with the restoration. Right on cue, my events coordinator, Sarah, appeared. Ms. Riley, we need your signature on the final vendor payments when you have a moment. Aunt Carol's eyes widened. Several heads turned. Perfect timing. I stood, smoothing my dress. Actually, before we wrap up breakfast, I'd like to say a few words. The room gradually quieted. Faces turned toward me, some curious, others wary. I moved to the small podium we'd used for announcements all weekend. First, I want to thank everyone for coming. My voice carried easily through the space I knew so well. This reunion has been memorable, to say the least. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. I pulled out the stack of envelopes. As a gesture of appreciation, I've prepared something for each family. But before I hand these out, I should probably mention... I paused, letting the moment stretch just slightly. That I'm not just hosting you as a relative. I'm hosting you as the owner of the Sea Glass Inn. The reaction was immediate. Gasps. Dropped forks. Uncle James actually choked on his mimosa. You own this place? Cousin Melissa blurted. Along with 2 other coastal venues, I added, enjoying the way her jaw dropped further. We're actually booked solid through next season, but families should get perks, right? Aunt Margaret, Dad's sister and ever-faithful defender, pushed back her chair with a screech. Excuse me, she muttered, hurrying toward the exit. I watched her go, neither surprised nor bothered. But others were leaning forward now, interest sparking. My cousin Rachel's husband, a real estate developer, was practically vibrating with networking energy. Even Aunt Carol's criticism had morphed into calculation. Inside each envelope, I continued, you'll find a thank you note and a voucher for 20% off any future event booking at our properties. I nodded to Sarah, who began distributing them. Weddings, anniversaries, corporate retreats, we do it all. The energy in the room shifted. Whispers turned from scandal to status. I could practically see the mental mathematics. Lauren owns this place. Lauren has connections. Lauren has power. My cousin Delia rushed up, clutching her envelope. Oh my God, we were actually thinking about booking our vow renewal next spring. Can we talk about dates? Of course, I smiled. Sarah can check availability for you. More relatives crowded forward, questions flowing. When did I buy it? How did I manage it? Would I consider a family discount for Jessica's wedding? I answered smoothly, professionally, but my mind drifted to the empty chair at table 6. Dad's absence felt both heavy and liberating. He'd always taught us that power meant controlling others. But real power, it's about controlling yourself. The coastal property market is really something. Uncle James mused loudly, clearly hoping to establish business rapport. You must have quite the portfolio. I do all right. I kept my tone modest but firm. No need to mention the other acquisitions in progress. Some cards you hold close. The breakfast wound down naturally after that. Relatives lingered, suddenly eager to exchange business cards and contact information. A few apologized awkwardly for everything that happened. I accepted graciously, but made no promises. As the room slowly emptied, I walked the perimeter, straightening chairs and touching tables that were now undeniably mine. The morning light caught the crystal chandeliers, scattering rainbow prisms across white tablecloths. Sarah appeared with my laptop and schedule. The Martinez wedding team wants to do a final walkthrough at 11. I nodded, already shifting mental gears. Let's give them the full tour. The article hit like a tidal wave. By Tuesday morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as the story spread across 3 counties. You know how small towns work. News like this travels faster than light. I sat in my new office at the Sea Glass, scanning the headline for the dozenth time. Local legend's dark secret, the truth behind Margaret Riley's death. The journalist had done her homework, weaving together Josie's testimony with old police reports and weather records from that day. It was thorough, damning. Dad didn't stand a chance. Ms. Riley? My temp assistant knocked softly. The school board's press release just went live. I pulled it up on my screen. There it was in black and white. Coach Eugene Riley's retirement effective immediately. They'd frozen his pension pending review. 30 years of carefully maintained authority, gone in 3 paragraphs. Remember those college funds he'd redirected to my stepsister's wedding? Karma's funny that way. My phone lit up with a text from Aunt Carol. I'm so sorry we never listened. Delete. Another from Cousin Rachel. Can we talk? Archive. The messages kept coming. Some apologetic, others angry. Most stayed silent. I let them all sink into my inbox unanswered. I had bigger things to focus on. Your 10 o'clock is here, my assistant called. The real estate agent? Right. I had properties to view. The Sea Glass's success had caught attention. Other venue owners were looking to sell. I straightened my blazer and grabbed my portfolio. The smell of fresh coffee and sea air drifted through my open window, reminding me of Sunday mornings when Mom would sneak me down to the beach before anyone woke up. The next few days blurred into contracts and calls. I interviewed 7 assistant candidates, signed preliminary paperwork on 2 promising venues, and fielded queries from 3 different wedding magazines wanting features. Every time I passed the framed photo of Mom on my office wall, I touched it briefly. Soon, I whispered. The bronze bench was being installed Friday. The contractor needs final approval on the bench placement, Sarah reported Thursday afternoon, and the engraving proof came in. I reviewed the design, simple, elegant letters that would catch the sunset light. Margaret Ann Riley, truth heals what silence breaks. Perfect. A notification popped up. Dad's coaching academy was shuttering. Their website cited restructuring, but everyone knew why. His speaking engagements canceled one by one. The country club quietly removed his name from their board of directors page. The Anderson wedding planner called again. Sarah interrupted my thoughts. They're hoping to book for next spring. I smiled. Tell them we'd be happy to show them around. Our waitlist was growing by the day. Friday morning, I watched from my office as the construction crew positioned the bench. They worked efficiently, securing it into the curved garden overlook where the sea stretched endless and blue. The bronze gleamed warm in the early light. It's beautiful, Sarah said softly from the doorway. It is. I gathered my things for a venue tour. Make sure the crew has everything they need. Walking past the bench later, I noticed someone had already left flowers. White lilies, Mom's favorite. A small card nestled among them read, "We should have known. We should have asked." It wasn't signed, but I recognized Aunt Margaret's handwriting. My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Dad's photo, looking aged and drawn, accompanied a brief statement from his lawyer. He was stepping back from public life to reflect on recent events. No apology, no acknowledgement. Typical. I had 3 more properties to view that afternoon, 2 catering tastings to approve, and a stack of contracts waiting for signatures. Success, it turns out, keeps you deliciously busy. The venue's calendar was booked solid through December, with inquiries stretching into next year. Standing at my office window that evening, I watched the sunset paint the garden in gold. The bench caught the light exactly as I'd hoped, Mom's name clear and strong against the bronze. A young couple walked past it hand in hand, pausing to read the inscription. They were probably here for tomorrow's wedding. Sarah knocked gently. "The lawyer sent over the paperwork for the Newport acquisition. Should I have them messengered over?" "Yes," I replied, turning from the window. "And let's review the staffing projections for the new properties. We'll need to scale up fast." The morning of the dedication, I woke before sunrise. My silk dress, Mom's favorite shade of cornflower blue, hung ready on the closet door. You know those moments when everything feels weighted with meaning? This was one of them. I'd kept the ceremony small by design. No press, no family drama, no performative grief from relatives who'd stayed silent for 30 years. Just 4 of us. Me, Josie, Sarah, and Marcus from maintenance, who'd helped coordinate the installation. The September air held that perfect crispness that always reminded me of new beginnings. My heels clicked against the wooden boardwalk as I made my way to the garden overlook. The rising sun caught the bronze bench at exactly the right angle, making Mom's name glow like it was lit from within. "It's perfect," Josie's voice came from behind me. She looked different today, lighter somehow, like speaking the truth had stripped years from her shoulders. Margaret would have loved this spot. I smoothed my dress, fighting the familiar tightness in my throat. She used to say the ocean was where everything made sense. Sarah appeared with a tray of Prosecco flutes, the bubbles catching the morning light. Marcus followed with a small arrangement of white lilies and sea lavender. We gathered in a loose semicircle around the bench, no formal speeches needed. To Margaret, Josie raised her glass first, her voice steady but her eyes bright with tears. Who deserved so much better? The Prosecco tasted like sunlight. I'd spent decades carrying the weight of that day on the mountain, a 6-year-old's certainty that somehow she'd caused her mother's death. Amazing how guilt can become a habit, like holding your breath underwater. But standing here, watching the waves catch fire with morning sun, I finally let it go. The truth had done its work. Mom's story was no longer buried under my father's lies. "I have something for you," Josie said softly, pulling an envelope from her bag. "I found it while going through some old boxes. It's from the spring before." Inside was a photo I'd never seen. Mom on this very beach, laughing with her head thrown back, holding a tiny version of me as I reached for a seagull. Her joy was so pure it hurt to look at. "She adored you," Josie squeezed my hand. "Every single day." Sarah and Marcus stepped back discreetly, giving us space. I sank onto the bench, running my fingers over the engraved words. She matters still. Simple. True. Everything she deserved. "I should have told the truth years ago." Josie's voice cracked. "I let fear win for so long." "You told it when it mattered most," I said. When she hugged me, I breathed in her familiar lavender perfume, the same one she'd worn in all those old photos with Mom. After Josie left, Sarah quietly refreshed my Prosecco and withdrew with Marcus, leaving me alone with the sunset and sea spray. The evening light painted everything in shades of gold and rose, softening the world's edges. I kicked off my heels, letting my feet sink into the cool grass. The bench's bronze had warmed from the day's sun, comfortable against my back as I watched the waves roll in. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon line, the truth about Mom's death had waited 30 years to surface. My glass caught the light, sending prism patterns dancing across the engraved letters of her name. I touched each one gently. Margaret Ann Riley. Mom. Finally free of the shadows my father had cast. The sea breeze lifted my hair, carrying the salt-sweet scent that had always meant home. I raised my glass to the darkening sky, to the stars just beginning to appear, to the mother I'd lost and found again in unexpected ways. Here, in this moment, I felt her presence more clearly than I had in 30 years, not as a tragedy or a secret, but as she truly was, laughing on a beach, reaching for joy, loving her daughter without conditions or limits. The sun slipped lower, painting the clouds in impossible shades of pink and gold. I stayed, sipping slowly, letting the evening wrap around me like a familiar shawl. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was exactly where I needed to be. The garden path crunched softly under my heels as I walked from the main house toward the water. Music drifted from the reception hall, our newest couple's first dance playing out beneath warm strings of light. Their happiness felt like a blessing on this space, washing away the last bitter traces of the reunion's aftermath. You know what's funny? I'd imagined this moment differently during all those sleepless nights planning my father's downfall. I'd pictured myself feeling triumphant, maybe even a little smug. Instead, watching the sunset paint the waves in shades of amber and rose, I just felt peaceful. The evening air carried hints of sea salt and jasmine as I settled onto Mom's bench. I'd positioned it perfectly, just high enough on the slope to catch both the ocean view and the soft glow from the venue's garden lights. Running my fingers over the bronze nameplate, I smiled at how the metal had already taken on that lived-in patina, like it had always been here waiting. Remember how I mentioned karma works in mysterious ways? Well, the universe really outdid itself this time. The school board's unanimous vote to force Dad's retirement came exactly 1 week after the reunion. His carefully crafted image, the beloved Coach Riley, moral compass of 3 decades of students, crumbled faster than a sandcastle at high tide. The local paper ran Josie's full interview on page 1. By sunset that day, even his most loyal supporters couldn't ignore the truth. The man who'd spent 30 years polishing his reputation had finally lost control of the narrative. His income, his influence, his precious standing in the community, all of it washed away like footprints on wet sand. The breeze lifted my hair, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the reception. I took a slow sip of Prosecco, letting the bubbles dance on my tongue. Behind me, the venue glowed like a constellation of stars had settled in the garden. Sarah, my events director, had really outdone herself with the lighting design. A few relatives still called, trying to negotiate some kind of peace. "He's still your father," they'd plead, as if that title earned him automatic forgiveness. I'd listen politely, thank them for their concern, and change the subject to their upcoming events. Amazing how a healthy discount on venue bookings could redirect almost any uncomfortable conversation. The truth is, I didn't need their understanding anymore. Dad wasn't some towering figure I had to tear down or make peace with. He was just irrelevant, a cautionary tale about the price of secrets. His power over me had died the moment Josie's words confirmed what my heart had always known. Mom's death wasn't my fault. It never had been. The waves below churned against the shore, their rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. I watched a seabird dive into the spray, emerging with its prize before soaring away. Nature's little reminder that even the deepest waters give up their secrets eventually. Taking another sip, I caught my reflection in the glass. Shoulders straight, chin lifted, eyes clear. No trace remained of that uncertain girl who used to flinch at her father's disapproval. In her place sat a woman who'd learned that healing doesn't come from silence. It comes from speaking truth, no matter how long buried. The music shifted to something slower, more romantic. I turned slightly, watching the newlyweds sway beneath the twinkling lights. Their joy felt like a benediction, blessing this space that had once held so much pain. Now it was just another beautiful evening at the Seaglass Inn, where happy endings were our specialty. I raised my glass to the darkening horizon, a silent toast to the mother I'd finally set free. The ocean breeze wrapped around me like a familiar embrace, and I smiled, not with bitterness or vengeance, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally found her way home. "Silence doesn't heal," I whispered to the waves below. "Truth does. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for."